Excellent communication skills are a must for any good healthcare practitioner. That's why we're speaking to Hugh Gyton. He's the author of The Art of Conversations, and he's a conversation expert. He's going to share with us some tips on how we can make the hard and the easy conversations a little bit better. Today we're here with Hugh Gyton, who is the Managing Director of Just a Conversation and the author of The Art of Conversation. Hugh, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
It's great to be with you, Tara.
So Hugh, your book is called The Art of Conversation. So where does a conversation turn into art?
Well, if we look at the word art, I think there's some clues.
Yeah.
A for awareness. I think, interestingly, a lot of people just aren't conscious about how they go about communicating and having conversations. R is about being responsive. A conversation is meant to be two-way. It's not a lecture. So engage in it, be part of it, show that you're interested in conversation. And the T is thought-provoking. Be interesting, be engaging, be thought-provoking. And I think if you nail those three aspects, you're a very good conversationalist.
And what are the benefits of being good with conversations?
Oh, it's the glue that holds everything together. You know, I'm passionate about nothing truly happens in relationships, in business, in the development of humanity without great conversations. We wouldn't have got a man on the moon without the ability to have great conversations.
And what about difficult conversations? As health professionals, sometimes we have to, tell people some bad news, maybe about their health condition or something like that.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that? How do we make that better for them and as well for us?
I think once again the art shows us the way, which is be aware that it is a difficult conversation. So seek first to understand. I think one of the challenges of a lot of us when we're in conversation is our intentions may be absolutely fantastic, but the effect that we might be having on the other party can be quite challenging and sometimes totally different to what we intended. So I think getting conscious and aware of this is now potentially for them quite a difficult and challenging conversation, and just because I as a professional deal with it all the time doesn't mean I shouldn't be ready for the fact that their reaction may be slightly different to what I expect. The R, once again, be responsive. So I'm a great one. We've all heard about, two ears, one mouth, listen twice as much. I think, these are extremely powerful in our ability to listen, and that we're not very good, a lot of us, at being present in a conversation visually as well as auditory. And that, really listen actively when you're delivering a difficult piece of news and be responsive to how they're physically and emotionally reacting as well as how they might respond with words.
And what are some strategies to become better conversationalists? Like, what are some things that we can do right away?
Make a conscious choice to be one.
Yep.
I think that's a huge one. I found it fascinating when Tracy and I were writing the book. I started to get more conscious myself, even though I'm passionate about conversation. I run a business called Just a Conversation, but even I, of course, have bad habits of behaviour around not thinking as much about it as I could. So I started getting really conscious about opportunities for conversation. And so in taxis, I'd started talking to the driver a lot more than I would normally choose to do. And it was just fascinating what you can learn from a total stranger in situations like that. So I think the first art of conversation is choose to become a conversationalist.
And what about difficult conversations such as, there's lots of health professionals who are maybe managing staff. What about difficult conversations like that if we're giving performance reviews or if someone's not doing as well as they should be? What are some strategies to help us deal with that?
Great question. It's clearly shown in Australia that management throughout industries in Australia are struggling with the whole performance management reviewing. And for a lot of us, that potential conflict, giving people bad news, telling people they're not stepping up is very, very challenging. So we've got a simple model, we call it input. The I of input is what part do I play in the fact that this is actually quite a challenging conversation, or they're not performing at the level that I need? Have I been clear in what the level is? Do they even know? Often I look at my clients who the only time they do this is at the annual review. So they kindly tell me that for the last 12 months they've not been happy with my performance. Not particularly helpful. So I is, check in with yourself. What part are you responsible for? The N around recognising there's a need to have a conversation, have it now. The longer you leave bad performance, the harder it's going to be to have the conversation.
Yeah. So what if we've got scheduled time? So should we still do, like, you know, just chats, conversations, instead of specific performance reviews?
I think it's absolutely appropriate. I think that the warning I would make is make sure, though, that you are catching yourself telling them they're doing great stuff before you give them the feedback. Guideline, 3 times, tell them they're doing great stuff, 3 times as much as you tell them they're not performing. If you want people to receive and hear the constructive feedback, they want to respect you as somebody whose feedback they appreciate.
Yeah.
So if all they ever hear from you is you're not performing, you're never here on time, I didn't like the way you handled that patient, then they're just going to say you've got a personal issue with me and I'm not really listening. Yeah. If on the other hand you've complimented them on a number of things on a regular basis, they respect your opinion because, hey, we all like to be appreciated.
Yep.
So now when you've got some constructive feedback, there's more chance that they'll listen to you.
So we've done I, and then what's P?
P is about proof.
Yeah.
If you're going to give people constructive feedback, make it objective. Don't make it, I'm witnessing, I feel, I don't think you are. Be very, very precise. Give them very precise
Of specific
feedback.
times as well?
Specific, absolutely specific. Be as specific as you can.
And what about evidence from other people? Is it appropriate for us to say, well, so-and-so said this, or not appropriate?
I think it's appropriate to say feedback I'm receiving is.
Yeah.
I don't think one should necessarily point the finger at individuals, but even so, it would be more valuable if that feedback was very specific. So it's not that you're getting a reputation for, but feedback I've got is you had this situation and this is what was observed you did. Another good insight here is using the ability to try and depersonalise when you're giving feedback.
Yes.
Don't make it about between you and I. So if you have got some evidence, or even if you've got some, an employment contract says this is how we do business around here, use the document. So take them to the document as you're giving them the feedback, rather than I have an issue with you. It's Tara, it's really interesting, this employment contract we both agreed on a couple of months ago, you notice this clause here on how we behave. How do you feel you're going against that particular clause? And so that it's the evidence rather than I've just got an opinion about you that says I don't think you're coming up to the plate. So that's the P. U is understand where they're coming from. Empathic listening. Seek first to understand and be understood. So it's really just checking with yourself specifically before you start the conversation, but also as you're going through the conversation, make sure you are being open to what reality might be for them. And just keep checking in that you do understand where it's coming from their point of view. And once you've gone through that, the T of input then is about making time such that the pair of you spend time appropriately to agree what are we going to do moving forward? How are we going to minimise the chance of this happening again? And really make sure you bind them into that commitment. And
speaking of time, is there something to say for timing of having conversations?
Oh,
so can I just talk to people as we walk past and grab coffee or something? Or
I think one of the fascinating things about why I think conversation is an art, not a science, is it's a life skill that you're continually learning. It's a bit like yoga, you never master it. So timing, I think, often is subject to your understanding of their personality and when it's going to work for them. I've got a couple of young children. What I've learned is there's no point me asking direct questions of my son. All I get is good. I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there. He's 9. And I'm sure a lot of parents out there would relate to that. What I've discovered is the time to talk to him and give him some feedback is if we're in the car together and he's sitting behind me, that's a great time to have a conversation because he feels very safe. I'm not looking at him, I'm looking on the road, I've got my hands on the wheel, it's sort of... hopefully, it's sort of casual, he doesn't feel it's an interrogation. Or walking him to school or from school, he's beside me. So I think timing is critical. Pick a moment. If they're highly emotional at the moment, it's not the time to give them some constructive feedback. Allow them to mellow and calm down, do it tomorrow. But I think the environment you pick as well is very important with difficult conversations. Make sure it's an appropriate environment for them to be able to hear you as clearly as possible.
Great, Hugh, thank you so much for your insights today. It's been very helpful.
It's been my pleasure.
We've just heard from Hugh Gyton about the art of conversations and how we can become a better conversationalist. Hugh, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
My pleasure, Tara. And remember, success is just a conversation.
Thank you.